Hey, and welcome back to another edition of the Friday Show brought to you by Walmac Farms Pinehurst. Standing at Walmac, I'm Ray Paulick, joined by bloodstock editor Joe Nevills, and our guest this week, Lisa Lazarus, the CEO of the Horseracing Integrity and Safety Authority, otherwise known as HISA. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Hey, Joe, what's going on with Pinehurst there at Walmac?
So Pinehurst standing his first season at stud, and I'll admit, when I first heard that Pinehurst was going to stud, I had my reservations. I wasn't sure he was kind of a late arrival to the stud ranks, so I wasn't sure what to expect. And then I went out and saw him. So impressed. The scope on this horse. You got to see it. Long leg, lovely stride. If you haven't gotten a chance to go out to Walmac Farm to see Pinehurst, take the time. He's right in the heart of things. Go out to Walmac, get a look at him. I bet you're going to be impressed.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you to Walmac Farm for their sponsorship of the Friday Show. So, Lisa, there's a lot going on. March 27th is the anticipated startup date. We're hearing a lot of different things about whether or not the anti-doping medication control program will go into effect on that date. What is the latest?
So the latest is that we are quite confident at HISA and at HIWU, the Horseracing Integrity and Welfare Unit, the March 27th will be the effective date. It's the last day in the 60-day period that the FTC has to either reject or approve our rules. And all indications so far that they will be approved, although, of course, that's ultimately up to the FTC. And I guess also significantly, there's no pending legal action that could get resolved prior to March 27th that would halt the implementation.
So day one for any new initiative is going to have its bugs, its things to work out. It's, things that you might not have expected to happen until you sort of see it out in the field. What do you think are going to be some of the biggest challenges on that first day? Is the team prepared for testing?
So we're really prepared. I mean, the Horseracing Integrity and Welfare Unit has been working extremely hard on being operationally ready. They've been to every racetrack, actually multiple times. It's racing on March 27th. They've been training test barn staff. One of the things that I'm really excited about is that on day one, you'll see that everybody will be subject to a paperless chain of custody system. So test barn collectors will walk in with a preloaded iPad for the race card. They'll just click on the horse that they're testing, and everything will be automated. Chain of custody will be clear. The responsible person will get an email confirming the chain of custody. So that's going to sort of look and feel really different. And we've tested those systems many times. So I'm very hopeful they'll be working well on March 27th.
What are some of the other sort of important changes that the new program is going to bring?
Yeah, so that's a great question. For me, probably the biggest game changer is the harmonization of the laboratories. We have a smaller group of laboratories that will be conducting sort of authorized HIWU testing. And what's important about it is that they're testing for the same substances at the same levels, which is really a difference from days prior where every state had potentially a different laboratory. You don't know what their panel of testing was. The labs weren't kind of talking to each other about what levels they were calling positives at. And that's a real disadvantage to horsemen who go between states because they can't rely on the fact that if their horse tested negative on a medication program in state A, that they have the same result in state B. And that's really, I think, one of the most important linchpins of the new program. And that's, one of the benefits of having a truly national uniform program is getting the labs on the same page. The other thing that's going to be really different, and I think a step forward, is that there's not going to be this, wholesale reliance on post-race testing. Our testing plan is going to be very much fueled by intelligence, investigation-based. We have Sean Richards, who was the FBI agent who was instrumental in developing all the evidence around the Navarro and Service prosecutions. He's heading up investigations for HIWU. And there'll be a lot of out-of-competition testing, much higher levels than we've ever seen before. And the last thing is just the swift and efficient adjudication. Sorry.
So pretty much stopping the horses from, stopping, potential cheaters from entering before they get there, win the race, and have to deal with all the purse redistribution and stuff, like cut them off at the pass before they even entered the gate.
That's certainly the hope.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So HIWU is a new organization, but they're affiliated with Drug Free Sport, which has been doing this for quite some time and at the major league level. Is that right?
Correct. So Drug Free Sport does all of the testing for the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, NCAA, golf. I mean, they're really, the national leader in anti-doping testing. Of course, that's human testing. So they've been getting educated and up to speed for almost a year now on what equine testing looks like. But obviously, a lot of the processes and procedures are quite quite similar. And they are professional and ready to go.
So we live in a world, as you know, where there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation, and people trying to cloud facts. And what are some of the misperceptions, misinformation about what HISA is trying to do?
So I think, first of all, one of the things that I think came out of some of the conferences last week was, HISA is sort of doubling down on environmental contamination. And if you have, a small amount of some substance in your horse's system that wasn't your fault, you're going to face serious consequences. And that's 100%, 110% not true. HISA, actually, our rules are the first racing rules I'm aware of to have something called the atypical findings policy, which actually roots out environmental contamination basically before it becomes an anti-doping rule violation. And so if in fact it is genuinely contamination, then it'll be like it never happened. Essentially, once there's an internal review and there's a conclusion that it was contamination, there won't even be a disqualification, because there are certain environmental contaminants that doesn't make sense for that to happen. On the other hand, our rules and our policies around banned substances, which are the doping substances, are extremely rigorous, and penalties will be very severe. So the whole philosophy and rationale behind our program is what horsemen have really been asking for, which is help us out in contamination when something's really not our fault, not in our control, be reasonable with medication, and get at the cheaters, get rid of the cheaters. And that's what our program was drafted and built to do.
I've also heard or read that some of the ADMC policies are not based on science. What's your response on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's just not true. We have a very well educated, well-resourced, very professional ADMC committee that developed the rules, relying on science, relying on studies, relying also on other jurisdictions that conduct testing in horse racing, relying on other things like the FEI, where I have a lot of experience working, that has an equine anti-doping program, relying on all of the best practices and science from all of those different areas and resources. That's what fueled the development of the program. And I would argue that actually there was more attention paid to science and to stuff that we could really rely on from an accuracy and professional standpoint than there's been before, and an opportunity to do it on a national level.
But it's all Pinehurst.
Grade 1 winner at 2.
Very impressive in the runaway Del Blanc futurity.
Graded stakes winner at 3.
Pinehurst so gutsy.
The highest earning son of Twirling Candy.
Pinehurst lasted home to win it for the United States.
Bred on the same cross as Gunrunner. Pinehurst, standing at Walmac.
Anyone that's talked to me for more than 10 minutes knows that I'm a small track guy. I come from the bull ring circuit. Michigan was never, they never had a graded stakes while I was paying attention. So a lot of the people that I speak to who come from those circuits are concerned that, the costs associated with, HISA and these new programs could potentially put a lot of these tracks out of business. I've heard some people sort of accuse it of being, this is the elites trying to sweep out a lot of the, the smaller tracks in the business. How can those concerns be alleviated, and what can states do to, cut costs and make this a more affordable thing for states and those smaller tracks?
So there was a lot of thought and discussion about how to support the smaller tracks that want to work with HISA and actually care about safety and integrity, how we can make sure that they have a real chance to be competitive. And so a lot of our rules were actually developed with that in mind. One of them is our cost allocation model, which is essentially what determines what each state pays. And there's a fair amount of consideration in that model paid to smaller tracks, so that tracks with sort of higher purses do have to carry more of the load than tracks with lower purses. The other thing that I would say is that, the amount of money that's currently being spent on anti-doping and on racetrack safety, if that stays in the system, what'll happen then is that those smaller tracks won't have a significant burden. So for example, in Nebraska, the racing commission, if the racing commission was actually, willing to work with us, the entire invoice for the whole 2023 for HISA would be $11,000. But when the Racing Commission decided they would not work with us because they didn't agree with HISA, et cetera, that put the burden on Fauner Park to be too considerable because they had to actually pay for all of the things that the commission had been paying for before. And that understandably made it unaffordable. So, we have to kind of work together if we want to allow the smaller racetracks to continue to thrive or to thrive more. And I think, honestly, if they work with us on safety and integrity, and we do have a number of smaller racetracks that are, they're going to realize the benefits of that from a profitability standpoint down the road.
Let's take a look at one of those smaller tracks, Turf Paradise. It's a track that's been cited earlier this year for numerous safety violations. They signed an agreement that they're going to address those concerns. How can HISA actually enforce when they send a warning letter or a citation that they're not up to the standards? How do you enforce that?
So what we can do, and what the HISA board is sort of authorized to do, is to essentially take the position to decide that they are no longer authorized to run covered horse races if, in fact, they're not complying with our rules and not complying with basic and very important safety issues. We have a big responsibility at HISA to make sure that our equine athletes and our human athletes are well cared for and are safe, and that's our whole regulatory system is built around that. And if tracks fall short of that, we will take action against them, and it will be serious and it will be severe.
So does that, I guess, what are some of the actions? Is that strictly we pulled a simulcast signal thing, or is that you can't run horse races anymore, period, kind of swift and severe?
So there's a number of things. I mean, obviously we would start, I think, and I'm not talking about Turf Paradise specifically,
yes,
we would start with, a sort of finding system, and we would try to put in place, sanctions to motivate, better behavior and motivate fixing what needed to be fixed. But ultimately, where we would get to is the inability to run covered horse races, which means the loss of the simulcast signal, loss of the ability to take ADW bets. Those are two of the financial repercussions that would be sort of the ultimate consequences.
Gotcha.
Hey, earlier, Lisa, you mentioned testing is going to be done the same from state to state, and there's accreditation of the laboratories. Isn't there currently accreditation through RMTC or some other non-racing accreditation standards? What's the difference?
So for the first year, because obviously, HIWU and HISA weren't up and running yet, we adopted the RMTC accreditation process. However, there's a sort of second process layered on top of that, which is the HIWU contractual process. So in other words, you are eligible to be a HIWU HISA lab if you're accredited by the RMTC, but on top of that, you have to meet the performance specifications that HIWU requests to enter into a contract. So the number of labs that will be sort of accredited to analyze HISA HIWU samples will be smaller than the RMTC accredited list. If that makes sense. Well, and that will be public fairly soon. We're just sort of finalizing the little dotting some I's and crossing some T's on those last few contracts.
Well, Lisa Lazarus, I know you've got a busy couple of weeks ahead. It's Monday after next, I think, when we anticipate the anti-doping medication control program to go into effect. We appreciate you taking a few minutes out of your schedule to join us on the Friday show. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. Always a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Right. And we'll see you all next week. Thanks again to Walmac Farm for their sponsorship of the Friday show.
Support award-winning independent horse industry journalism and become a Paulick Report Insider on Patreon. For as little as $5 a month, insiders get access to exclusive Q&As with Paulick Report staff, insight behind our editorial process, exclusive opinions and on-site analysis, Paulick Report merch, and more. This is not a paywall. The website you know and love will always be the same. But if you want more, and you want to make our coverage even better, visit patreon.com/Paulick Report and become a Paulick Report Insider today.